want to ask a question. Do you think about silence? Or is it just me? I think, some level of intellectual obsession with the notion of silence, the very concept of silence, and what it could stand for or what it significantly has come to mean to us as a society, how we tend to avoid silence and all these kind of things. Maybe you haven't thought about silence before. I will not blame you. This is not something that I think anybody should be thinking about. Maybe I have too much time on my hands, or maybe I just like involving myself in things that maybe are not my business. I don't know. But anyway, I am bringing that obsession to your ears today. Today, I want to talk about silence. In this audio essay, I'll be exploring what I think is a philosophical understanding of silence, my personal philosophical understanding of silence, mind you. Disclaimer, as usual, everything here is opinion based, even if there is some level of research to it, which it will be stated if there is, it is still in the end my opinions. And with all of that out of the way, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever time of the day you are listening to this, and you are welcome to another episode of Volatile Times with Daniel. Happy New Year once again. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome, welcome, welcome. We love inviting new family members and new friends over here. Subscribe, as always. And now let's get into the episode. Okay, let's start by talking about one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Actually, of all time is a stretch. But anyway, let's talk about John Krasinski's Quiet Place. A Quiet Place is a movie that was released on Netflix in 2018, and I have to say it was revolutionary when it came out. Not to sing praises, but like the movie was an extraordinary watch, and it still is till today. I remember rewatching and rewatching all three movies in the franchise. I don't really like part two, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I found the very premise of the movie itself fascinating, more so on the philosophical level. For those of you who haven't seen the movie for whatever ungodly reason, I'm not going to promise no spoilers, and I'm not going to do a breakdown of the movie. No. But I am going to explain the major plot around it. Anyway, the movie centers around a family, and this is talking about A Quiet Place, part one. It centers around a family trying to survive after the world was destroyed by somewhat invulnerable creatures. These creatures fascinatingly hunt by sound. And let's not lie, in a world like ours, there is a lot to hunt. Okay? To survive, people had to stay quiet, like very quiet, like one could even say silent. Okay, so the beginning of the movie teaches us this fact. It lays down one of the most crucial aspects of its world building in the very first few scenes. I think it was like the very first 3 to 5 minutes of the movie. I'm not sure. But anyway, it teaches this fact through the sacrifice of the innocent. The family goes out on their regular scavenger hunt for food and other resources, and the way they walk, oh my God, they walk in such a way as to generate the least amount of sound possible. They make sure their clothes don't crumple. They mind falling leaves. They don't wear shoes most of the time. They spread sand wherever it is they are going to walk to soften their footsteps. And they communicate in sign language and all these things. They essentially took all the precautions on their way out. But as the saying goes, where man plans, heaven laughs. On their way back, no one paid attention to the child they left to trail the rear of the line. And if we are being honest, children are beings of chaos. They are agents of chaos who, if we leave unsupervised, can cause unwanted destruction to property, to other people, and most especially to themselves. This unattended baby had grabbed the batteries because they went to kind of like a convenience store. Obviously, it was abandoned. They were getting medical supplies and, non-perishable foods and all that kind of stuff. So this child got a toy car, or was it a toy plane? I can't remember. It was a toy that was going to make a lot of noise. And they removed the batteries, gave it to him and everything. But on their way back, they left the child at the very, very back. I don't know who does that. That is so irresponsible, okay? I have to go on a tangent. That is so irresponsible. You do not leave a child that young. That child was probably like between the ages of 3 to 5 years old. I don't know, don't quote me, but anyway, he was a baby, okay? He was a baby. And they left him alone at the back. And this unattended baby had grabbed batteries for those loud ass toys. And then, somewhere along the way, on the bridge, out wide in the open, and this is where at first, you look at that scene and you be like, yeah, oh, they just needed this to happen for the plot. But at the same time, children are literally like that. Anyway, out in the open, this boy puts the battery into the car. Was it a toy car? I really can't remember. But anyway, let's go with toy car. He puts the battery into the loud house toy car, and as if signaling the arrival of a tribute, the car bled its industry approved death signal. And within seconds, literally seconds, like the car went and then boom. He was claimed by an angel and whisked away into oblivion. So the movie essentially beat us over the head with it. It was either stay quiet, stay silent, or die. And this introduction to the most important thing about how the world works in that movie was jarring. It was captivating, but at the same time, it was misleading. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. I would forgive you if you watched the movie and you ended up associating quietness or more so silence with life and sound or noise with death. But actually, it's the opposite. Okay, so what do I mean? All right, let's start from analyzing or looking at the creatures, okay, the creatures that are haunting them. These creatures are agents of death itself. As they are aptly named, they are called death angels. They are violent, merciless, grim reapers, death's postmen, and merchants of silence. And like the popo rolling in to shut down a noisy rave, the death angels, Hades Corps, have arrived. Somebody filed a noise complaint, okay? The death angels seek out noise, the everyday evidence of the existence, presence, and movement of life itself. It is a quiet place because it is dominated by death, and it has marked its presence through silence. Think about it. To survive, they have to stay silent. But what do these creatures called the death angels hunt, right? They hunt sound because the creatures cannot see. They are blind. They don't really smell. They can't swim. But one way they navigate the entire world is through some sort of sensory location, auditory sensory location. So they locate via sound. And for people, and here's the funny thing about us, we are very noisy creatures. We make a lot of noise, both internally and externally. And for creatures who make a lot of noise, that is the most detrimental kind of predator that we can have. Not diseases, not everything, but the creatures that seek out life itself, or rather the symbolism of life itself, because they don't even hunt the human beings to eat. They don't hunt them to feed or anything. The creatures are basically introverts at their most predatory nature, okay? They just want everybody to keep short, and they are willing to kill for it. Anyway. Many horror movies employ the notion of silence as a marker of death's presence. In some slasher movies like Scream, for example, while the victim is running away and still bears a chance at life and some minor distance to death, the scene is full of noise, okay? Think about when the guy in the ghost mask, he's hunting the girl at the very beginning of the first Scream movie. Oh my God, I'm such a old horror movie head. Anyway, he's hunting the girl, and it's this kind of creepy hunt. He's calling her over the phone and everything. There is so much sound going on. There's so much going on. But when do they scream? At the very moment which they're about to die. Have you ever noticed that? Anyway, that moment when it goes quiet is when we wonder, are they gonna die or are they dead? When the vampire hunts at night, toying with its prey and eliciting fear, the chase is marked by the excitement of the background music. And then there is a little quiet before an explosion of sound. Then it fades to silence. The expiration of the last breath. That is when we know, oh God, she dead, he dead. It's over. In many of these movies and horror games, when it gets quiet, you're in danger. In films like 1987's Predator, 1997's Anaconda, and others of their kind, when the environment quietens, the birds stop chirping, the burrowing animals stay silent, and funnily enough, as disrespectful as they are, the insects pause their rocketing. You are now within death's domain. Your chances of survival are abysmal. Trust me, you want to hear noise. You want your surrounding to be making a lot of noise because and it's something that fascinated me a lot when I was watching Anaconda back then and even the Predator movie is that they always knew at some point in time. I remember the character of Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of having this thought in his head and realization that when everything is really silent, the predator is nearby. And that same notion is also mirrored in the Anaconda movie too. Whenever the anaconda is around, everything else goes silent. The birds are not moving, the animals are hiding because they know the queen is here and she is hungry. Every day we seek out noise. We proclaim our desire for peace and serenity. We want everything to just keep quiet. We want just peace, to just be ourselves, just be by ourselves, nobody bothering us, no honking of the horns and everything. But I think, in truth, what we want is a temporary quiet, not an everlasting silence. We are always listening to and making sounds. When we lie in bed to rest, we play something to fill the space, whether it's music, whether it's a YouTube video in the background, whether it's a podcast. We are playing something. We are doing our chores, and many of us do not prefer to do our chores in silence. We will sing, we will dance, we will play something, the TV will be on. Something is going to be making sound. If the entire neighborhood goes quiet while we alone are at home, and there is no sign of life. Now, see how that sign of life is essentially the presence of noise. Yeah, when we do not hear anything, we feel uncomfortable. We can describe this scene as being eerie or creepy. And the closer we get to silence, the more we reject it because our intuition is toward life. And life is never silent. Life is very, very much loud. To delve further into this metaphorical comparison, depression is also a situation involving silence and its relation to death. Have you thought about that? Whenever someone is depressed, they isolate. And being depressed is a lot of things. But one aspect that I think is universal to depression, especially deep-seated, deep-rooted depression, is the feeling of dying. There's this sense of death, the death of the self that is experienced and actualized through means like isolation and alienation. And the thing about isolation and alienation is that you distance yourself away from people. You isolate yourself away. You kind of build your metaphorical anechoic chamber, right? The depressed person would most times distance themselves, willingly or not, from life and its presence, noise. The depressed would feel a deep desire for life. They want to be alive. They want to feel alive. They want to participate in life. But due to the death sense, due to that feeling of isolation, due to that feeling like they are unworthy of life, like if they touch life, they make it lose its quality, its sound, they withdraw further into themselves, into their dying shell. They want to die because they feel dead, but they want to live despite thinking that they are its antithesis. Silence is the quality of no sound. I think we can agree on that. That is the basic definition of it. It's quiet when there is nothing to hear, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is silent. This one property of the sound concept continues to evade human experience. Despite all our inventions and ingenuity as a species, we always come close to silence, but we never really experience it, at least not while we're alive. There's something called an anechoic chamber. It's a room that stops sound waves from reflecting off the walls. Silence is nigh achievable. Silence is almost achievable in rooms like this. The room is designed to block outside sound and also prevent sound waves from traveling around the room. So you could be inside that room and you could shout, and that sound will not move past maybe at most 5 centimeters of you. This is essentially what earns rooms like that the monikers of the quietest place on earth. But notice, quietest, not the most silent. Because rooms like this, despite being commonly described as silent, aren't ever truly silent. Because after you experience the room, the illusion of silence is broken. In an anechoic chamber, you become the sound. You begin to hear your lungs, your bones, your heart, and so much more. When you don't hear anything else, you will hear yourself. And I don't know, that shit is terrifying, okay? I remember there was a time I experienced hearing my own heartbeat, almost down to even hearing the blood rushing through my veins. And I'm not gonna lie, that was creepy as hell. It was very, very creepy, okay? I don't want to experience that again. Despite the fact that all we want is some quiet, the quieter it gets, the more unbecoming it becomes. As if signaling a warning, the silence of an anechoic chamber becomes like a ringing cry. Tinnitus becomes the body's defense mechanism, begging you to seek life. Don't succumb to the silence. Don't succumb to death. And outer space is no different. Outer space is a land of no wind and hence no sound because sound requires wind to travel. You don't hear the earth rotating along its axis in the outer space, the sun blazing like a hot diva, or the asteroid lollygagging about. You don't hear them. But they have their tones and rhythms. They have their own sounds. It just doesn't travel towards you. But those sounds are there. They are present. Now, if there is no sound moving around about you and towards you, can you in some way say you are experiencing silence, even if it is some sort of personal silence? I'll say yes, but only if you aren't the one creating the noise, and good luck with that. Because just like in an anechoic chamber, which mirrors the vacuum of outer space, in that sound doesn't travel, there's no air for sound to really be traveling, you will hear yourself. You will become the production of noise. You will become the set, you will become the tools, you will become the instrument, you become the instrumental, you become the lyrics, you become sound itself. A cemetery is considered silent because it is dead. For where life exists, sound is present and all sound is noise. Even if the world ceases, if you persist, the show continues. Our typical way of navigating life is by positioning ourselves amid noise, language, expression, music, industry, and so on. Everything is noise when you think about it. Wherever we establish life, we push silence aside because we, being alive, are inherently noisy. The body is silent only in death. To survive in a quiet place, one has to dwell in close and constant proximity to death, to silence. Death angels don't hunt because of hunger or for sport, they hunt because they hate the noise. True to their name, wherever they dwell, they quieten the place by offering silence, by peddling death. And one of the reasons why I said to survive in a quiet place, you have to dwell in constant and close proximity to death, to silence, is the elder sister of the boy that died at the beginning. The elder sister is deaf. And we see in the second installment of the A Quiet Place franchise how her deafness actually works it works as sort of a disadvantage to her. In A Quiet Place 2, she is going out to seek for help or some sort of, I can't remember, okay? I can't remember. I focused on part one because part one is the one I really love the most. But she is going somewhere and then she is in this bus, this abandoned bus. But because she's deaf, she cannot hear the death angel that is there. But here's also the thing. She can't hear the noise and the sound that she herself makes. Yes, she has grown up learning to stay quiet, learning to make as little noise as possible. But the thing is, she can't know if she's really making noise, if her footsteps are making noise or anything, because she cannot hear. And so it brings us back to that thing I said at the beginning, that if you associated silence with life, I wouldn't blame you for that mistake. But if you paid attention, especially in the part two, you realize that that silence is not life. Silence is death. To survive, you have to stay close to the silence, but you are staying close to the silence, but you can't really be silent yourself, because if you are silent yourself, you are dead. And if we're being honest, if not for Plotter, that girl will have died a million times. Okay, she will have died a million times. Silence is an aspect of the entity death, because death is ethereal, it is unknowing, it is transcendent, and it is indiscernible. Only in death can one experience silence, but to experience silence, one must disengage from all experience, because silence is the sound of death, the sound to end all sounds. Okay, so that is it for this audio essay. I'm so glad it's short because my audio essays sometimes can be long. But anyway, I just wanted to communicate my pseudo-philosophical ponderings on the notion of silence and how it actually represents ourselves in our lives, albeit subconsciously, right? And the thing is, I think people who have worked in the sound design industry or sound design profession have noticed these things also a bit subconsciously, but it also factors in how they design movies. I just watched Alien Romulus recently, and the very first 15 minutes of the movie, not the production screen side, but like the action movie, the very first 15 seconds of the movie made me know I would love the movie because of how they utilize silence. The utilized silence is such a very, very, I wouldn't say revolutionary or unique way, but at the same time, it was unique to the movie in and of itself because it was outer space, and until we zoomed into the spaceship where the system came alive and everything, we didn't hear anything. And that's how it's supposed to be. We aren't supposed to be hearing anything in space, but at the same time, sound still exists. And when the system came up and we were zoomed into the system interface, we heard its sound. And that right there is peak sound design. But anyway, thank you so very much for listening so far. I'm very glad that you are here, and I'm very glad to continue the year with you. If you are going to follow me on social media, if you want to follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at Daniel Briggs. You can also find me on Twitter at Daniel Briggs. Links will be in the description below. Also, I have a newsletter, in case you don't know. It's been running for like the last 2 years, where I post or publish one essay, one very deep introspective essay per month. And I just released one literally a day to the publishing of this episode. So go over there. It's titled Cabinet of Introspection on Substack. Link will be in the description. Thank you so very much for listening. Thank you so very much for being here. I hope you're subscribed. I hope you've rated this podcast, because I want to see you in the next episode. But until then, ciao.